We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Do we have volume? I don't think so.
Is it just no?
Okay, hang on a moment. We're going to have a volume adjustment. Maybe. Yeah. Testing.
Check, check.
Gotta love technology. Testing, testing. Is there a volume switch?
Hello? Is it working? Write it on the back of the piece of paper and hold it up.
We are having we're having difficulties.
It could be that people out there can hear you.
Maybe they can.
Hear it in here, I don't know.
Yeah, if you can hear us out there in the public, please, I don't know, wait 10 minutes and check back. Steve, is there a button you can just stop the mics? I mean, shut that power off to these and then restart? Kind of like a reboot? Oh. There you go.
Did I hear something?
Well, I heard a little.
Test. Nope. Maybe we just.
Hey, Scott, turn yours on and talk in it. See if the camera, does that notice you over there?
Hello? Can you hear me now? Nope.
Okay.
We started it on and off to twice, and you're just gonna have to talk loud, I guess.
Okay.
We'll keep looking at it, but we'll just keep going.
Okay. Sounds good. Hey. All right. I think we're live and on the air now, so our apologies. We had a little technical difficulties. Welcome to the April 2nd meeting of the City of Windom. First off, we have the consent agenda. Included are the following minutes. Council minutes of March 19th, HRA minutes March 13th. The regular bills and the license included are the temporary liquor license for the Windom Chamber of Commerce for May 15th. Council, which to take action?
I'd make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion Marv, second by Scott, to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Department heads. Okay. We'll move right along to Minnesota Department of Transportation. Ann and Mary are here again with us to do a project follow-up. We had good discussion last time, and we had a few questions that we asked of them. So they are here to give us the answers and a little follow-up today.
Yeah, thank you for having us again tonight. A list of questions from last time that we looked into. So we'll just start right into that. First question was, could an acceleration lane at Quick Trip be installed? The concern was that traffic travels too fast at that location, and it makes it hard to get onto Highway 60 at times. So I had some engineers at our office look into that, and unfortunately there's an insufficient amount of length available there. So from the Quick Trip entrance to the edge of that bridge is about 600 feet, and typically that's what's needed just for the taper portion of an acceleration lane, and so that wouldn't allow vehicles to get up to speed, and it especially wouldn't allow trucks with a trailer or a semi-traffic to get up to speed in that location either. So that's a little bit of the geometric concern, as well as using that bituminous shoulder out there. It seems like we've got a lot of width, but if you were to put that acceleration lane on, you'd actually be on the shoulder pavement, which isn't built for that. As well as it would increase the complexity of that area, and so there hasn't been any crashes associated with that Quick Trip entrance itself. So that acceleration lane would bring in some new complexities that could make that a little bit more confusing for people and increase those conflict points. Next one is, could the camera/boards with traffic approaching be added at Highway 71? Same concern with Quick Trip, traffic travels too fast. Can be hard to get on to 60 at that location. I believe those are the boards you see at Mountain Lake. And so with some digging into it, what I found is that was actually an experimental thing that MnDOT had tried. And so we installed them in a few locations to research them and see what that benefit was. And what MnDOT found was that there was actually no net safety benefit to those signs. So it's not something that MnDOT's installing at this time anymore. So unfortunately, it's just not a tool that's in our toolbox right now. But on the good news, I do have a tool that's in our toolbox. And so that was the permanent speed display signs, since that speed is a high concern at that Highway 71 junction with that 45 mile an hour speed limit there. And so the city can install those permanent display signs, so as you drive through it would display your speed there, which I think some cities do see very good results with that, because I think we've all been in that place at times where you just don't realize that you're still going 57, or fill in the blank what it is, and you see that right in front of you and you realize I need to slow down. And we all get caught in that sometimes, and unfortunately some people do more than others, and so it is a beneficial thing that could be installed at that location. And so that is something, if the city would like, we can look into. I think there's 3 different documents on the types of signs that can be purchased, as well as that process, because that will take a permit from MnDOT. And that is something that MnDOT doesn't finance, so that would be something the city would finance. But it is relatively reasonably cost. I think the equipment itself is probably in that $5,000 range, and then there'd be the installation. So is a relatively cheap tool that could help in that location. Next, moving on, and I'll go through these really quickly, and then if you guys got a question you want to bring up, but otherwise I'll keep moving through them, and then you can let me know questions. Next one was cost participation manual. We kind of spent a lot of time talking about that last meeting, and basically how that cost cost participation is for signals and how that works at MnDOT. And so, unfortunately, the cost participation manual will not be updated in the next few years. There's certain areas that MnDOT's looking at within that and just trying to get a better grasp of where we have inconsistencies. So MnDOT's goal is to make sure that, if Windom pays for something here, somewhere up by Duluth, that it's that same cost breakdown, and trying to target spots in the manual where there's a lot of discrepancies on how that's handled statewide. And so unfortunately, the signal or intersection fixes, that's not one of those pieces, because it's very clear on that percentage breakdown based on the leg of the intersection owned. However, my District 7 management, they are aware of that splitting cost idea based on traffic volumes. So that is something, whenever there's a full discussion about the cost participation manual, it is something that our management plans to suggest statewide. So there is that piece. Continuing on cost, question was, what happens if the city does not pay for their portion of the signal system? And specifically, we're talking about the 10th Street intersection, where currently it's 2 legs are Highway 60, 2 legs are 10th Street. So it's a 50-50 cost share between MnDOT and the city. And so I think the biggest concern is the foundation of those signals. And really, worst case scenario, no one wants to see that signal system fall on a car or a pedestrian or, just on Highway 60. No one wants to see that. So that signal system does need to be replaced, but if there was not cost participation, that signal system would need to come down in the near future, and stop signs would have to be installed because the signal system can't be replaced without participation. Let's see. Are there any gray areas where MnDOT can pay additional portions of the signal system to compensate for the money the city spent on the right turn lane at the Dollar General? And so, unfortunately, like I had mentioned, the cost participation manual is very clear on the cost being prorated at the same amount as the number of legs. And so, also, we're held by state statute, and I'm sure the city's held by the same thing, where you can't expend funds if it's not encumbered previously. If anyone's curious, statute 16C, 16A. And so that's kind of where we're at for that. But the one thing with that is that in the future, if that Dollar General turn lane does get built, MnDOT can use the plans that were put together. And so MnDOT will still construct that turn lane. And that will still be in place, so that design won't go to waste. The other thing with that is the city has requested that the bump outs on 10th Street don't get installed, and so MnDOT, to do that, has to purchase that additional right-of-way at 10th Street and then reconstruct, I think it's around 200 feet or so of sidewalk, curb and gutter, all of that on 10th Street, so east and west on the local leg. And that is something that MnDOT can pay for. So that cost is right around $50,000 that MnDOT can pay for, just because it's not in that same split, if that makes sense. It's kind of, it's weird how it all works, but that is something that MnDOT can pay for. So that's a really quick summary of those 6 questions. So I'll let you guys go ahead and I'll see what questions you have today.
Okay, I just would like to make a quick comment on a couple check marks I had here. And thank you for calling the other day and briefing me on this. So I'm kind of referring to my notes here. The cameras, the blinking displays, and our chief of police is here, and they have one that is not permanently installed, but it's one they can move a trailer, and I believe they work. I think that I see myself slowing down trying to meet the speed limit. Not saying that I went over, but, you know, it keeps you in line, I think. And I just would ask Scott, do you think that's a good idea on these locations? That, yeah, okay. And I think that's just a positive. I think we're hearing that, yeah, it's our cost, but something permanent there within the public right away, you know, could be an asset to slowing things down. So I looked at that as a positive. The cost participation with the signal, we have known for a long time that I think that we knew what the amounts were. We hoped that they could find a gray area that, you know, could be handled, but yet I think that signals there would still be the best option, in my opinion. And I'm thinking that because I really would think that if it was stop signs, you're going to have you know, the stop signs are a right turn only. I just think it could be a mess at that intersection. So, but I thank you for looking into that and your explanation.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing on that. I was doing some research today, and I actually found the agreement from 1984, 1985, when those signals were installed. And it was actually the same split at that time. Obviously, the cost was different, but it was still that 50-50 cost at that time, so when that signal was first installed.
And my understanding is the McDonald's corner, that's 100% covered by either the state, or 75% state and 25% county?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And let's see. That's it for me. Okay.
And you did strike my memory from, I think, a question you had yesterday as well. And the question was about the maintenance of the signals. And so nothing would significantly change from what you guys experienced today with the regular relamping of the bulbs. You'd still have that. One benefit would be is the new signals will be galvanized, so there won't be any painting costs with those poles going forward. So that'll be one positive with that. The only other note I have is if the city's interested in the battery backup, that would be a cost of the battery backup replacements would be at the city cost. And then I think we've talked a little bit about the emergency vehicle preemptive lights, so the lights that go on top of the signal that can flash and then change the signal when it has that receiver in the police car or fire truck or whatever it may be. If that's something you're interested in, that is also city cost. So it's just those two pieces, the battery backup and then that emergency light. If the city chooses to install those, that's not something that's required, kind of your choice. The painting cost goes away and then you just stay with the regular relamping, and MnDOT covers the knockdowns, the technology if something goes wrong, hardware, interconnect, all of that as well.
Now you triggered a question with me about the, you know, for our police and fire departments here could shut that or could stop, right? I mean, okay, so they can pass through. What if the highway patrol they be given the Department of, you know,
Yep.
the state employees? Will they have the ability to stop the traffic?
The state, you know, a state DOT vehicle, I don't believe has that equipment. By all means, the car we drove here in today does not. I'm not certain on state patrol cars. It's a good question because I think it just depends what emergency vehicles have that installed in, because it's something that doesn't come from the factory. It's something that is installed. And I'm not sure if you guys have any equipment with that technology currently, but if it's a new signal going in, you might want that technology.
Well, we might, but then would have to charge, you know, MnDOT back for letting the highway patrol stop the traffic. That's
Yeah.
what I was getting at. So
Yeah. I'm not sure if they do.
I'm fine with that.
Just so you're in talking about the battery backup and the preemptive on the signals, you're talking about at 10th Street, but you would also want them on the ones on 6th Street, Highway 62, and those would be at 100% city expense because MnDOT nor the county are gonna pay for those.
And so I think we do want them because we'd get 50% reduction in cost technically for our, no, for our own, if you figured we get that benefit on 2 lights, we'd be getting,
But whether they pay for it or not is part of the signal, because it's an over and above expense that she's saying the city has to pay for, so you just need to be cautious of that.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it'd be
making
foolish
sense.
to have one on one, but not on the other.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if you're not prepared to spend $100,000 on one signal, you don't want to spend that.
I,
Yeah.
so
and-
that'd be determined by really this,
Correct.
yeah.
Cost.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, that's up to you guys. And I don't have those costs right offhand. What those costs. And if you're not familiar with the battery backup, that's for allowing the signal to flash red when something happens. I think currently you guys would have to put out stop signs, or we would. That gets coordinated. So it just gives that ability to have that flashing red and not someone going out there to set up stop signs when the signal's not working or there's a power outage, whatever that may be. But yeah, those are 2 things that are completely city choice, and we can talk down the road about those costs as well.
I would just say about the batteries, significant cost to install, significant cost to maintain. Yeah. I have a couple of things. You had mentioned that you were going to had a booth at the Farm and Home Show. What kind of feedback did you get on the striping at
Yeah. I could share a little bit on that. So we had a booth at the Farm and Home Show about a month ago, and a lot of people in attendance. We've been to that show before for other projects, so it was good to see a number of folks still attending that show. I think we counted roughly over 200 people we talked to, and I would say the good majority of people were pretty neutral. So we didn't have nobody, jumping for joy, throwing out candy, excited, and not really that many on the extreme opposition either. I would say what was really nice is we could talk with folks really about the why, walk them through kind of where have we been, where are we now, where are we going. And I think once they had a chance to kind of digest that all, it was a sense of, okay, sounds good, we'll see how it works. So I would categorize it as neutral, which was good. I think we had a lot of good conversations. As with any project in any community, we're going to have a few people on both ends of the spectrum, and that's to be expected. We can't please everyone, but I would say a good majority of folks were pretty neutral on the project. So, actually a really good chance to clarify a lot of things too. I think a lot of people had maybe some assumptions or misunderstanding of how things would work or flow. So we had the layouts there. We also had a fly-through video just kind of looping that kind of gave an aerial viewpoint and vantage point of the corridor. So here's, where the lane drops will be. Here are the things that are going to look different. Here are some things that are going to kind of stay the same until we have a full reconstruct. But it was a good chance to talk through some of that because I think it helped understand, again, like where have we been, the corridor study, what's kind of happened in between. We had this quick trip react and respond situation independent of a Highway 60 project. Now we're here, and then eventually we're preparing for a future reconstruct. So it was a lot of good dialogue. Yeah.
We had some of the, I don't know if I like it yet, but let's try it. We understand why we should be trying it. And they understood that once the reconstruct comes, because we did spend some time talking about the roundabouts at the intersections of Highway 71, north and south, and they understood that, the community should be sure going into that reconstruct that they're getting what they want and they're getting what works for their community. So a lot of that, let's just try it type of attitude. But as Ann said, you always have people on both sides of the spectrum, but overall pretty good, pretty neutral.
And I would say if we were to kind of summarize the categories of things that people brought up or what we spent the most time on, because I think we were solid with people the entire 5 hours. So it felt like a lot of repetition, but a lot of questions about Quick Trip and a lot of assumptions like, well, that was your test run of a 3-lane. Why are we extending it? And it gave us a really good chance to talk about how that was independently isolated, spurred by economic growth. and the challenges that came with that. You know, it's not a perfect solution, but it's working for the interim. So we, you know, Quick Trip came up a lot, and I mentioned this to Dominic yesterday, a lot of commentary around should have bypassed Windom years ago. So it's interesting enough that while that's kind of long gone, you know, that's not something we're progressing forward, it's still interesting how that still comes up a fair amount. So talking about how we've had commentary in here on past meetings on how wonderful it is that it did bypass town because of what it brings to the community. So as with anything, we've got folks on all ends of the spectrum, and I think that's just the nature of society, but even in the work that we do in transportation and proposing things of change or not change.
And on the flip side, we heard from business owners and other people that they're so glad we didn't bypass Windom. So you heard that, both sides as well.
A couple other things that were common themes were both 71, so 71 Toro, just the challenges there, and then 71 on the south side. And I think it was a chance for us to say, we agree, they're not ideal, and we can't do something because they right now because they require a significant pavement fix. So that's coming with a reconstruct. We acknowledge that. We have a plan for it. This is when it's going to be. So that was helpful to talk through. It's not like we're dismissing those things. We agree. The corridor study showed it. We've got a plan for it. And then speeds through town was another category that came up. So we talked about some of the benefits of the restriping with that. Eventually the roundabouts would slow folks down on both ends of town, so that's coming. So again, like I said, when you have people's undivided attention, you have a chance to have a conversation rather than just a smattering of things they've heard maybe through the rumor mill or assumptions of how things will work. We could really talk through some stuff and kind of work through each of their questions or talk about the project as a whole and where it fits in this timeline, if you will, so that there's some sense behind it too. So people were very, very responsive.
And then the other thought was, and you mentioned the funding of the roundabouts. Our local editor from our newspaper, and then Mike, mentioned that, well, if we don't have the funding for the roundabouts, why don't we wait with the striping also? Maybe do the lighting, but then wait on the striping until we have the funding for both the roundabouts and the striping.
Yep, and I can take that. The issue with that is how you construct that roundabout's going to be different for what's happening in the middle between the roundabouts or even on the outsides of them. So you want to make sure you know, are you constructing a 2-lane roundabout or a single-lane roundabout? And if you haven't tried the through lane in each direction with the center left turn lane, you don't know what that answer is. And once we get to that point where we have the funding to do the roundabouts and the pavement reconstruct, whatever gets constructed out there, both the city and MnDOT are stuck with that for quite a while because it's a significant cost, and that's when the pavement widths and the curb lines, I'll say, change. And so the benefit of this project is really it's a test run, it's a trial run. It's not something that's guaranteed that's what it's going to look like in the reconstruct. It really just gives the community to make sure and feel confident that when that significant pavement fix comes, that the community feels good and they know that's what's right for their community, compared to just going right to the fix and then being stuck with it for the next 30 years or fill in the blank, whatever it is at that point.
I don't have numbers in front of me, but cost difference between 2 roundabouts versus restriping is fairly significant too. So
Yeah.
it's not like just shifting dollars and swapping them out. We're talking significant difference in cost.
Yeah, if I had to, right now this project sits between $1.2–1.5 million for the restriping and both signals. A reconstruct 2 roundabouts, you're talking $4 to $6 million for 2 roundabouts plus all the pavement. We're talking upwards of $20 million for that, and so it's a relatively, $1.2 million is still very significant. It's a lot of money, but it's a cheap insurance to make sure when when we get to that point where we're spending that significant money, everyone's confident that it's what's best for them.
Scott, I guess I'm kind of disappointed in the stuff that we asked, and it come back that when it comes to cost sharing, we don't get no cost sharing, because we share tax money towards some of this stuff, and the city really hasn't got much bang for a buck coming back this way from MnDOT, that, for right now anyway, from what I can see of. And with no crash, I just keep getting beat up on that, no crashes out there yet. How much money is it going to cost when somebody does get hurt out there? That's my biggest fear, is when somebody does get hurt out there, it's a life, it's you know, their livelihood and stuff like that. And I don't think you can put a dollar bill on that.
I would definitely agree with you. You can never put a dollar bill on the impact to someone's family when something like that happens. And so I think the issue is with the Quick Trip Highway 60 access itself, so right on Highway 60. And so that was I think a big deal for both the city and Quick Trip, is making sure they had Highway 60 access. And so that's something that was wrote in with that, is I think, you know, quite frankly, if there was space there, that acceleration lane would have got installed right away. And it's something, you know, our engineers brought up different manuals and checked lengths and widths and all of that to see if it would fit. And unfortunately, in some instances, we see the benefit of an acceleration lane, and in some instances, we don't. And this is one of those where we wouldn't see those benefits. And so, not that any of us want to see that Quick Trip access closed, but I believe that was in the agreement, is that if there becomes a crash problem there, that could get turned to a right in, right out, or something like that. No?
That's wrong.
Okay.
I'll just tell you now, that's
Yep.
wrong. It was the Highway 71 access could get closed.
Okay.
There was a queue back, but there was no right in, right out in the top.
But I do want to thank you guys for coming down and talking to us and stuff like that, because the city really needed somebody to talk to and kind of vent towards and kind of figure things out. But I want to thank you guys for coming down and talking to the citizens of Windom. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer questions. We're here to look into things. So we're always happy to do it, even if sometimes we have to provide the hard answers. And quite honestly, I wish I came with better answers on some things, but it's just, you know, sometimes it's how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately.
I don't know, I heard an awful lot of unfortunately when it come our end, what we were gonna have to pay. And I grew up here for years. Everybody said 4 lanes from the South Dakota border, or from Worthington all the way to Minneapolis. I see St. Peter's gonna have 4 lanes, but we're not. They're cutting them down. Does that mean that we have different engineers from they were 10 years ago up in St. Paul? Or are you thinking, oh gosh, you know, I've heard the comments too. They want to put in a 2-lane bridge. That's why they're doing it. It'd be cheaper for them. Does that ever come up?
Yeah, I can address that. So the bridge comment I have not heard. You know, I think the challenge with Windom itself is the curb-to-curb dimensions we're working with. When you drive out there and you see how close that Dairy Queen building is, or even that Hy-Vee, Schwalbach's Hardware, the bank, there's a lot of buildings that were built very close to Highway 60, and so that becomes the struggle, is you don't have that room to expand. Where in St. Peter, you know, that corridor was built very wide. There is that ability to expand, and there's not as much, when you look at, you know, how things are built, if you drive through St. Peter, you don't see as many businesses access as right on there. There's, you know, there's some, but when you look at their downtown, it's on the streets. There's parking on the side. But out here in Windom, we've got a lot of business access, and that was something the city and the community really wanted to maintain, was to make sure that businesses had Highway 60 access. And so that's what becomes the challenge, is how do you balance that? And talking with Mike here recently, he brought up this great thing from Chuck Mahone And so it's this concept of a strode, and it's where you try to put together a street and a road, and how those are two things that are really hard to put together. And I think that's the challenge we're in here, is that you're trying to balance significant through town, but you also have a very lively city that needs benefits for its community, and it needs to function as a street for them. And so how do you balance that street and the road? And you get in that middle, and somewhere there's that give. And I think that's where the through lane and the left turn kind of balances that, because you get all those left turn movements, you get space, you decrease crashes because you're moving those turning movements into their own dedicated spaces, but you're still allowing that through traffic, and you're balancing that. So I think it just depends what the community's priorities are, and if those priorities shift, then maybe the 3-lane isn't the answer, or the through lane in each direction. But with the priorities that were identified in the corridor study, that's why that alternative was chosen, because business access on Highway 60 wants to be maintained, as well as balancing that traffic flow and creating a safer corridor for pedestrians, for motorists, and balancing all those needs in one.
I know you don't like that, Jim, but we are restricted with width. I mean, that's a fact that,
We should be grandfathered in, so we shouldn't have to worry about that then.
okay,
It's five.
I think,
5 lanes through a lot of it.
yeah, right. 5 lanes through a lot of it. But I think, that was a great point. Our businesses are very important to us, and our downtown and our square. And there's no room, for the 4-lane. I don't see, without tearing down buildings and purchasing right away and building them a new building somewhere else. I don't know what other option. Quite honestly, that's my feeling. So it's a tough call. But any other questions? Mark does.
I can see the benefit of getting off the highway in the left turn, because it allows you to left turn off. But to left turn on, when you're reducing 4 lanes to 2 lanes, you're almost eliminating left turn on. Because I was at Quick Trip the other day behind a semi that was in a left turn, and I bet we sat there 15 minutes because the traffic all gets stacked. Where it would have cleared, probably not twice as fast, but a whole lot faster if it was 4 lane and you could make the left turn. But being that, because the traffic was really heavy, and so it's all stacked, so you just sit there and wait.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think Quick Trip's hard because it's such a short amount of, it's not a large area, so I think you do see that stacked more in there. It's something that, quite frankly, I was surprised with when I looked at different engineering studies, and that the through lane in each direction shows you actually have more gaps to make that left turn because you get traffic in 1 lane. So instead of fighting traffic in 2 lanes, they end up stacked and you end up with more of a gap. And I struggled with that too. I'm like, I don't believe it. And then, I've drove in a few different locations just to see how it works. And I have a hard time sitting here trying to tell you something if I've never gone out and drove it or experienced something. And so, I agree with you. It's a hard concept. And I think that's something where you'd see that benefit from trying it with the restriping, because that's the flexibility of it. It's just a pilot. It's not something where we've changed curb lines and now we're stuck with it. It's something that it's just a seal coat with striping that can be seal coated again, and all of that. You have that flexibility. But I agree, it's a hard concept, and I can see how that can happen at Quick Trip especially.
Any final comments? I think we are going to talk a little bit about the next step, if you wanted to touch base on that.
Yeah, so I think our next step here is to move towards that municipal consent piece. And I kind of talked about it last time, and so we had a lot of questions and a lot of discussion in that, so I think it might have kind of got lost in that discussion. So the municipal consent is something that is triggered by state statute for MnDOT across the state. And that is, in this project, it's triggered by that permanent right-of-way, that permanent property acquisition by MnDOT. And it's also triggered by the restriping, so the through lane in each direction, that capacity piece. And so those two items is what trigger municipal consent. And that's, it's just a state statute protection that makes sure that the body of MnDOT isn't coming in and steamrolling a city and just doing what they want. It's, it allows for that dialogue to happen and that collaboration. And so that's where we're at currently, moving towards municipal consent. And so it's just for those two items. And so what I anticipate happening is sending a packet over to Steve with the layout, good faith cost estimate, some project details here by Monday, and that'll trigger the whole state statute timeline. And so with that, so I send it Monday, that's April 8th. By the 23rd of April, a public hearing should be scheduled. And there's a lot of timeline, and it'll be written out clearly in the packet, so Steve doesn't have to dig up the statute to figure out the timelines. But the public hearing will occur between May 23rd and June 7th. And so a public hearing occurs on a city council date. And so I think looking at your city council meetings, that would occur June 4th. And then ideally there'd be that resolution at the meeting. And so that would happen at that time or the next council meeting. And so one thing I think MnDOT's going to look at doing, a lot of times we hold an open house right prior to city council meeting. And I think one thing we're going to look at doing, just based on some feedback, is holding that the week or two prior to create that separation and get some conversations out ahead of time before that public hearing.
Well, I, for one, think there needs to be a time gap from the hearing and not doing it the same evening or something like that. I think, I think people can reflect on it a little bit, and if they still have concerns, after that public meeting, they can voice their comments then at the hearing that we schedule, right? Would the council agree with that? Time gap? Okay.
Yeah, so we'd probably look to do something mid-May, we were talking about, just to kind of create kind of a buffer. And it was good, being at that Farm and Home show, talking to a lot. We'll talk to more people. We'll talk to more people there than we will at a transportation open house. So it was great. I think it was a good chance to talk to a lot of folks. And then another open house is a great chance too. And again, I think just reminding all of us that, I think it's just to get that understanding and that dialogue going. I think there will always be concerns. There will be always people on different sides of the fence of how things should be done. So it does give us a chance to kind of have some of those additional questions that aren't related to municipal consent. Because as Mary said, really that evening of June 4th, if that's the date we land on, it's looking at the two things. It's purchasing permanent easement from the city of Windom for the traffic signal, and the change in the restriping. So, there's a lot of other questions that have come up from the public that are outside of that spectrum. So we can deflect those at an open house and talk through those. And beyond projects, we're always phone numbers out there, emails out there. When we were in Windom, we were answering questions about Mountain Lake and other communities. So we're used to that. That's okay. So I think that's a great idea from council to create a little bit of a buffer, and we can certainly do that. So we'll plan for that.
And that's one thing I want to also mention is, so with that municipal consent is, that doesn't mean all these other questions like you guys have been asking, which are really great questions. It doesn't mean those questions stop. It's a process the whole time. So those questions are still welcomed, and we can still work through things. It's not like nothing in the project will change. There's always going to be those little things we have to work through. It's really for those two pieces of the permanent property purchasing and then that restriping piece. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I bet one of you are wondering what happens if municipal consent is rejected. Unless I'm wrong, you guys are all ready to accept it today. No. And so with that is what that means is MnDOT can't purchase permanent property. And so that's at that 10th Street intersection because we're really restricted for space to install those traffic signals. So those traffic signals would still get replaced. MnDOT can't purchase property for those. And so what that means is that the signal cabinet and the signal will not get put in the ideal location. It'll open MnDOT and the city up to, in that reconstruct, that signal could have to get relocated because, it wasn't put far enough back to begin with. It could reopen up that bump out conversation because that's bumping out, not purchasing property from Hy-Vee or Higley. So that's, the signal would still happen. It's just those nuances of now how do we do that without that additional space that really makes it beneficial for the city and for MnDOT. So we both see those impacts there. That's for sure. And then the restriping piece would not happen either if it's rejected. And so what that means is we don't have a pilot. Whatever happens with the 2032, and I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what that's going to end up with, but whatever it ends up with, that's what everyone's stuck with. There was no, we tried this and it didn't work, and now we're doing this, or shoot, if we had tried that, that might have worked better because it would have solved X, Y, and Z problem. So that's kind of the position we both get put in at that time. And so I just wanted to explain that piece of it as well.
One question on that, on the municipal consent, if the city says yes to the municipal consent, are we speaking actually on behalf of Hy-Vee and also Higley? And will you be talking to them prior to this? Because I would hate to make a call based on their purchasing, right?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So it doesn't accept the amount of property purchased by any means. And so with any project, there's the negotiating. So our realtors, valuators, all of those people would still meet with those businesses. They have their own negotiations. That's not something the city participates in. I actually will be back in town tomorrow morning, meeting with Hy-Vee on that area. I've met with Mr. Joel Higley previously, and so we are having those conversations. It's not something they're not aware of.
Will we know that prior to us? I guess I want to make sure it's favorable to them prior to us doing the municipal consent, or isn't that?
And please correct if it's wrong, Mary. I think it's just permission for them to engage in that conversation to acquire that right of way. It'd then be up to them to work with Higley or Hy-Vee to actually purchase that. You're not really having a role other than saying you know that that's going to occur and it's going to be part of the MnDOT corridor at some point in time.
Yes, you're not accepting that Hy-Vee definitely has to do that. No. Yes, that's correct. That's not what
Yeah,
occurs.
you're
It
not
just-
invoking eminent domain or anything like that.
Yes, it just allows MnDOT to do that, essentially. So there's a little less pressure.
Any further questions? I don't think we'll make that motion tonight unless the council wants to. We'll wait. Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Oh, yeah, we have to have the hearing and all that, so,
I would recommend it.
yeah, okay.
I think it's required by statute.
Well, you asked.
You're right, I did. And so if there isn't any other questions, I want to make sure you all still have my contact information. I know sometimes in these meetings, you get caught in one thing, but it's, right after you're going to bed or the next morning, you're like, oh, I should have asked this question. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, phone, email, either one work. And if anyone lost my contact information, I've got more cards here today. But yeah, I'm always available to answer questions or look into other things.
Okay, thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you for your time.
The only thing, I guess, I think the people in town are ready to accept it. You know, it's gonna happen. But then they see the traffic coming through town, and you can put up a stoplight or whatever you wanna do, but you can't make them stop. And a lot of them don't want to. You know, is there, I guess that is one of the biggest things, is controlling the speed, as far as I'm concerned, is that, so that the trucks, now, I shouldn't say trucks, some of the pickups do it too, I guess, so. But there's a lot of traffic there at times, and it's, well, it's a wonder somebody hasn't been hurt or really bad, just in the city.
I agree. Speeds it's a hard thing, and you can't make anyone do something they don't want to do.
You know, you can put up a roundabout, yeah, that'll control speed, but when you come up to it, there's a yield sign there, but the person, that you might be already in there, and they're not good, they're going. You know, it's like they can't read or whatever. Because I know the one by Worthington on the Highway 60 has had a lot of issues. You know, it's just, and a lot of that, I think, is speed. I personally, I first run into these things years ago in Germany, and of course, they probably said, "The dumb American, I wish he knew what he was doing," you know. But so yeah, it's a, I don't know, but I think that's the biggest problem, is the speed through the town. Just what do you do, you know?
I agree with you, and that's something we heard a lot about, and I think you nailed a really great point, is you can only engineer so much, you can only design so much. People are, you know, no matter what you design and how well you design it, people, you can't force them to listen, you can't force them to read that sign. You can build that roundabout, but they can still, you'd be surprised how fast apparently you can go through a roundabout. And so you've always got that issue, and that's one thing with that through lane each direction. Engineering studies have shown, for what they're worth, that it does provide more consistent speeds, and it does slow traffic down a little bit. It's nothing significant, but that is a benefit to them. At least the engineering studies have shown, and that was shown up in Lindale in some real live studies that the consultant that's working on this did up in Minneapolis as well. And I'll just leave you with one example. Laverne, that's not too far from here, out by South Dakota, they've got this same concept of the through lane each direction, center left turn lane, and they're in the same case of, they tried it, I think it was installed 2016, 18, somewhere in there, and I'm actually working on their reconstruct right now, because they found it works great for their community. They've gained things, and so it's something they're choosing to permanently convert to, and that conversion's coming in 26, and so it's hard. You can only do so much when people choose to still do what they want, unfortunately.
Okay, with that, thank you, Anna Mary.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you again.
You guys have a good night.
Thank you. If the council does not object, I would like to move item number 8, the K-9 funding request, up to the next item. The council okay with that? Okay. Scott? Oh, that was yours.
Scott Peterson, Police Chief. In your package, you have a memo from me in regards to a year ago we had Officer Lewis Norrell became the Assistant Chief in Mountain Lake, and Mountain Lake purchased a dog, the car, and some equipment. We received a check for $13,850. After expenses, we have $9,925.81 remaining. It's my request that we start a fund, place that money in there, and start saving for a K-9. When we get back up to full staff, we've got people that are interested in doing that. This is a good start to get us there. I've got some other funding mechanisms that I'll bring to your attention later on, but that's my request for this evening.
Does council have any questions on the request?
What would be the goal?
The goal would be to purchase the dog itself is about $12,000, $13,000. When to equip the car, you're talking probably another 10 on top of that. Now, we've got some potential funding mechanisms that'll alleviate the tax burden or alleviate getting it from the taxpayers. Unfortunately, I'm kind of pressed for time due to another issue. So that's what I can get into tonight, and I'll come back and bring you up to date on the rest. So.
Okay, does that take a motion to set that aside, Steve?
Probably should, because the sale of the proceeds essentially went into the general fund, so if you just want to earmark it for that future use, it'd be pulling it out and putting it into a separate account, more or less. It's a special fund.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Jim.
I'd second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Marv. Any discussion? Sounds good. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Yep, be safe. Okay. We are to the number 4 already.
Correct.
The proclamation. It's National Library Week. I'm surprised our librarian's not here. Were you going to give the report, Steve? Okay. But I do have a volunteer that's going to read the proclamation. Dennis?
Should I introduce the...
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now would you please read it, and then we'll take the vote.
Okay. Whereas libraries offer the opportunity for everyone to contact with others, learn new skills, and pursue their passion no matter where they are in life's journey. And whereas libraries have long served as trusted institutions striving to ensure equitable access to information and services for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender, identity, or social economic status. And whereas libraries adapt the ever-changing need of their communities, developing and expanding collections, programs, and services that are diverse to the population they serve. And whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that promote a sense of local connection and advancing understanding, civic engagement, and shared community goals. And whereas libraries play a pivotal role in economic development by providing resources and support for job seekers, entrepreneurs, small businesses, thus contributing to local prosperity and growth. And whereas libraries make choices that are good for the environment and make sense economically, creating thriving communities for better tomorrows. And whereas libraries are treasured institutions that preserve our collective heritage and knowledge, safeguard both physical, digital resources for present and future generations. And whereas libraries are essential public good, fundamental institutions in democratic societies working to improve society, protect the rights to education, literacy, and promote the free exchange of information and ideas for all. And whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate the National Library Week. And now it's resolved by the City Council of Windom, Minnesota, that the week of April 7th through the 13th, 2024 is proclamated National Library Week. All residents are encouraged to visit their library and celebrate the adventure and opportunity they unlock for us every day. Ready, set, library.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions? Comments? Steve, roll call.
Nelson,
Yes.
Grunig. Benson,
Yes.
Quaid,
Yes.
Esplin.
And that resolution carries, and the proclamation will given be Steve to get to the library. Thank you to our library staff. Okay. Next item, resolution accepting donation, Fire Department, Windom Fire Relief Association. This is also by resolution, and they're gonna come up and talk.
Fire Chief Ben Derrickson, Assistant Chief Jordan Bussa. I'll just give you a quick little recap on how we came about this boat. Our old boat is an 85, I believe. It's been due for replacement for a long time. We met as a committee, researched what we have around our area, what we need to be able to get into as far as the lakes, the rivers, the sloughs, and those type of areas. We came up with the boat that you see here, which is a mud boat, and it's got a mud motor on it, which is a little different than a standard boat and motor. This motor is all air cooled instead of liquid cooled. It literally will run in about an inch of water. If you get stuck, it's got mechanisms in there where you can get yourself unstuck and that type of deal. We actually went out to Wisconsin, where we actually purchased this boat, and they gave us some rides on the boat out on the Mississippi and that type of stuff in the backwaters, and we really realized how valuable and necessary this type of boat would be for us. So we came back and we basically decided that this would be a really good project for our Relief Association to do with some of our fundraising dollars and that type of stuff. So it brings us to the point where we're at right now. We got the boat, we brought it back to Windom. It didn't quite look like this when we brought it back to Windom. We added, obviously, the lettering to it. We added some scene lights to it, some emergency lights to it. Equipped it with life jackets, anchors, that type of stuff to it. And basically came up with the total value of just short of $38,000. And we'd like to donate this from the Windom Relief Association to the city of Windom.
Wow. Very nice donation. That was one of the items on the list, been for quite a while now. Your Relief Association has really stepped up to the plate. So I think good things are happening with the fire department. We appreciate everything you guys do, and I would encourage the council to take appropriate action on this purchase.
Sounds pretty sophisticated. Do you have to be trained and certified to run it?
Actually, yes, you do. We're actually having that training for the department here Thursday night at our monthly training. It might be a little cool out on the water, but we're going to be out there training the guys how to use this boat and that type of stuff at that point. And after that, this boat will go into service.
So you're not gonna be training on opening weekend or nothing like that, are you? Just for my own good, I was kind of wondering. I'd kind of like to ride it too, you know. So.
we'll see what we can do about that.
The old boat, are you gonna sell that one then, or is it gonna keep around as a spare, or?
The old boat will get sold. I believe Steve got that added to the to the disposition tonight, so we will sell it off. I would assume we'll just do the public surplus auction like we've done with the old, like we did with the other truck, and I think the city does that with a lot of their other equipment as well.
Do you get Jordan some oars too, or are you just a motor?
We did get a couple of oars for it. Hopefully we never need them.
Well, I would introduce a resolution accepting the donation.
I'll second it.
Resolution introduced by Marv, seconded by Scott. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Esplin,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Quaid,
Yes.
Nelson, Grunig.
At this time, so it fits into the same category, should we have a motion to declare that surplus property? Or do-
If you want to do it here, you can certainly do it here, or just add it to the street equipment list when that comes up
Just
later in
add
your
it to
agenda.
that list. Okay, we can do that. Have we had a roll call?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it. I was so.
You didn't vote.
Well, I was looking at the the fireboat. Okay. What else you got going on, guys?
Next agenda item.
Okay. Okay, let me see. Windom Fire Relief Association Annual Benefit Increase Request. With the Fire Relief Association, we typically review our investments and where we're sitting yearly or every other year type of a deal, and try to adjust our figures accordingly and either increase or decrease the benefits so it suits into the dollars that we have. So we're all solvent and everything like that. We've went through them here the last couple of months again, and we've got quite a surplus right now. So we feel that we've got plenty of dollars to cover anything if it would happen, and we're asking to raise our benefits from $3,000 to $3,300. Council have any questions? You know, after they make a donation from that, that's pretty tough, isn't it? Good timing. I think they manage that very well.
They manage the fund very well, but the reason the council has to approve it essentially is if there were to be a shortfall and in the fund, they can obviously voluntarily reduce their benefit to match. But if they didn't decide to do that, the city is liable for the rest of that pension payment. So that's why the council does have to sign off on these, just so you know.
Makes sense. Council wish to take action?
I would make the motion to approve the annual benefit increase request.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the increase to $3,300. Any questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, guys, and I welcome any and all of you guys to stop over and take a look at the boat at any time. So, thank you. Okay. Oh, here's a stranger.
He was here last meeting.
I was not.
You were not.
That's correct. Floor is all yours, Andy.
All right. Andy Spielman, Building and Zoning Official. I've included a couple action items in your packet this evening. The first is to approve by motion the second reading of Ordinance 198 Second Series. This is what I was here for at the last meeting. City Council did the first reading. This is amending portions of our rental housing code. And so I can review those if you like. Otherwise, the requested action is just approving the second reading of that ordinance. Included in your packet was the ordinance, the same as what we sent out last time. It includes the current language in code. We've got some highlighting in there. The struck through language is what's being proposed to be removed, and then the highlighted language that's not struck through is language that's added to the code. I do have copies of the clean ordinance, which would be exactly as it's published and not published, but written into our codes. So I'll just hand those and pass them on down so you can read through and see exactly what the code will look like. But what's included in your packet is this highlighted and struck through version, just so it's easier to kind of see what's coming out and what's going in. So.
I'll make a motion that we approve the second reading.
I would second.
Motion by Dennis, second by Marv. They're pointing fingers back and forth. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And then we have the title and the summary.
Yeah, so the second item in your agenda is to, by motion, and fifth vote of the council approve publishing the title and summary for this ordinance. That's just kind of a condensed version of the ordinance, so we don't have to publish the entire thing in the newspaper. The requirement is that we publish it one time, and then once that's done, the ordinance becomes effective. And the ordinance, the title and summary was included in your packet also. It's just a summary of the ordinance that it passed out.
I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion Jenny, first time tonight, second by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries.
All right,
Thank you. Okay, now we're to number 9, the disposition of surplus equipment. In the packet was a list from the street department. And prior to that,
Go ahead.
prior to that, we should declare the old boat, I don't know what name, you'll figure that out.
So, yeah, it'd be we believe it's a 1985 Lumacraft. I believe it's a 16-foot boat with a 20-horse Johnson motor. So we'll have that description. We'll add that into the municipal bid site or where we do with that and sell it through that auction that way. We're estimating the value is approximately $2,500, but we'll see, because we can set a minimum value on that. But we'll get that published if you approve the disposition list. And then John's got a few things on from the street department that are outlined in the memo, being the London fogger. As you recall, we bought a new fogging unit this year. And then there's a Bobcat broom, angle broom, and then a Chevy pickup. And I believe we're going to list those with the municipal bid site. The county's going to help us access that, and they've had quite good luck with it. And so, so that's our plan for that. So there'd just be the action to include the boat in this list and then declare surplus and authorize the disposition. That would be the motion. 1, 2, or 3, however you want it.
I'll make such motion that Steve said.
Okay, so we're going to add boat to the list, dispose of, and declare surplus.
Yes,
So,
yep.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Motion by Scott, second by Jim. to do what he just mentioned and to declare this equipment listed as surplus equipment and disposition. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, multi-bank securities and incorporated non-corporate authorization resolution. Steve?
Yep, just real briefly, just as with the change of a new finance director, multi-bank, they're one of the banks that we place our investments in. They just asked to have a new non-corporate resolution on their file. It's been a number of years since they did one, so they're asking that we send them an updated one, and that would include my name and Donna's name on it, and then the mayor is the signatory on that. So, and that's been included in your packet.
Steve, there was one item in the packet, and now I forgot what it was, but Kim was still listed. I can talk to you later about that.
Yeah, you find it.
But, okay. Okay, and that is a resolution. Someone care to introduce that resolution?
I'll make the resolution of updating the multi-bank security.
I'll second.
Resolution introduced by Scott, seconded by Jenny. Any discussion? Roll call?
Nelson. Quaid.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Grunig. Esplin.
And that resolution carries. Item number 11, SEH, the Airport Services Agreement. This is for the 2024 joint and crack. That doesn't sound right. Joint and crack repair.
Well, that's what we're doing. So last year we had a project, did some pavement maintenance work. We didn't quite get through all of that last year, and so we're proposing this year to use some of our FAA dollars for our project to do more crack filling and joint sealing and that kind of thing, primarily focusing on the runway itself this year. We did a lot of the taxiway and apron stuff last year. This would be a 90-10 funded project. We don't know what the 90% federal, 10% local match. We don't have that state grant yet. This is just the engineering for it. And so that's what this agreement is allows us to enter into SEH to do the engineering for that project so we can then bring that project to you in a future date. So that's what this is, and we're requesting approval of the professional services agreement.
Is there a motion to that effect?
I'd make the motion.
I'll second.
Motion Marv, second by Jim, to approve the SEH Airport Services Agreement. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, Personnel Committee Office Summer Hours. Marv, were you going to take that one?
I guess we reviewed last year's hours, and we didn't see anything negative there. The thought was maybe it created more overtime. And I think actually it was just a slight bit less. So the Personnel Committee recommends its approval. So I would make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, I'm sorry, who had the second? I did. Okay. That was made by Marv and seconded by Scott. Okay. Any discussion to set the summer hours as last year? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries.
And just for the public's information, those office hours are going to be May 1st through Labor Day, and at 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. So open a little earlier, but closed a little earlier.
Very good. Thank you. Contractor payment and change order. I think we'll take these. The first one is a generator plant. Oh, he's here. He's going to talk about it.
Patiently waiting.
Patiently waiting.
Jason Scora, electric utility manager. So the generation plant is starting to take shape of a building of recent if you've been by. This pay request you have in front is mostly the steel, the big red iron that you're seeing, and then the roof decking, along with some of the office bathroom improvements that are going into the office area in the old pole building put up in '96. So where it's going from here is the generators were supposed to come the 15th. They decided to push those off until the end of May or the beginning of May. They're looking at them coming in the 29th. Reason for that is the floor didn't quite get poured and the roof did not get on with the recent inclement weather that we had. So they thought it would be wise to just hold off on bringing the gens in and get the floor poured and get the roof on. So setback shouldn't delay anything. Actually, it probably will help because we won't have to wait 15 days to get the floor poured. We'll get it poured, we'll get the engines in, and they can start getting the work done inside instead of having to wait for the floor to cure. So, yeah.
And Utility Commission has seen this?
Yep, Utility Commission approved it on the 27th.
All right.
So,
Sounds very good. Let's take that one first, the generator plant construction.
I'd make the motion to approve payment number 5 to Will County Construction.
I'll second it. Motion Marv, seconded by Scott to approve payment number 5 to Wilcon. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. And any opposed? Motion carries.
And just, again, for the record, the amount of that is $818,756.17.
It is sizable, as mentioned. We'll go into the minutes. And next, I see we have a change order. Not a big item.
no. So this change order, not to get into the weeds too much, was pretty debated. It basically came down to it was missed on the drawings to put in the furring strips to attach the steel and PVC paneling to the firewall. So had to have it to put it all together is what we were told by engineers and the architects. So
Isn't it funny, Jason, how engineers and architects can miss something, but it's always you have to pay for it? Right.
It is.
Well, was that a motion I heard, Jim? That's what I thought.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jim, second by Scott to approve change order number 3 to add the flat stripping to G12 wall at the cost of $2,819. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. And that carries. Thank you, Jason. Getting ready for golfing, I'm assuming? No. Oh, all right. New business. Council have any new business? Steve? Nothing else? Old business? Old business?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just old business quick, just to let you know, we found out today that that local road improvement grant that we applied for the reconstruct of 10th Street, MnDOT did not select it for funding. So we'll find out more later about where we ranked on the list, but both the county engineer, as they sponsored it, and myself got the email today saying, thanks for playing, but no. So just to let you know that, we'll, again, get some more information on that as we go, but I wanted to let you know that, so. They should have sweet talked us earlier.
Well, I hope we can work with our street department to get this smoothed out a little bit at some manner.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been thinking about that every day, right, John? Yeah. All it takes is money. Okay, any other old business? Anybody have? Council comment, Scott?
With spring here, and we're gonna have some wind coming up here within the next couple of days. If you guys got any patio furniture, any stuff that's loose, or even if you got garbage outside, please pick it up so everybody don't share in it. But I would appreciate it, because it does blow around the city, and it makes our city look tacky, kind of. So just help each other out. If you see something, pick it up and throw it away. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Jenny?
I'd just like to say, with the National Library Week coming up here in April, but really any day, it's a great time to check out our local library. If you haven't been in there, it is very nice on the inside. But they do have a lot of different programs and resources to offer for kids, adults, everything. I mean, it's amazing what they all come up with. The ladies down there are very resourceful and have a lot of great ideas, so check it out. And then with the Fireman's Relief donation, that just spurred and made me think, hey, they have Fireman's Dance coming up, April concert at the Windom Arena, April 27th. And so, support our local firemen and the Relief Association, April 27th.
Very good. Thank you. Jim? Marv? Dennis, you gotta speak up for the table.
I have nothing.
Steve?
I did mine under old business.
Well, I appreciate this council kicking in. I know I've been gone a few meetings here, but everything's going well with that, those items, so thank you. And to our community, spring's right around the corner, right? No more snow. So let's all have a great and happy spring coming up. We're adjourned by unanimous consent.